Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. Today we are talking about selflessness. That's a mouthful, isn't it, with the ness on the end. So tell us, Kirsty, this was a topic that you chose, and tell us why and what bothers you so much about this term.
Well, yeah, as you say, selflessness is quite hard to say, but I noticed that we've tended to come up with one word sort of episode descriptions. So I had to switch from being selfless to selflessness, which
we're now going to trip over.
Every time, yeah. But anyway, I mean, I find selflessness a really interesting word. I mean, the definition, because we like a definition, is concern more with the needs and wishes of others than with one's own. So it's basically about prioritizing, giving over taking or receiving, right? Quite straightforward. And I think we tend to see it as something we should aspire to, especially women. Thank you, patriarchy. Because, you know, we've long sort of lauded those women who are seen to subjugate their own needs, their desires, their dreams for the sake of others, usually men. You know, they fade into the background. And that sort of brings me to the word itself. I mean, selfless is basically not having a self. So beyond that definition, there is this really quite sinister sense of it for me, of not having a self. Like, you know, if you're careless, you're not taking care. If something is worthless, it has no worth. If you are selfless, you have no self. And that is nicely sort of demonstrated by the idea of the woman's subjugating everything for her man. You know, nothing about her matters apart from the care she can give to him and to the children and supporting his career, whatever it is. And in that sense, although it's often seen as something very laudable and something to aspire to, I actually find it quite a toxic concept.
Yeah, well, now you've described it like that, I'm slightly horrified, because we get the term, like you said, careful, careless, makes perfect sense. We don't worry about the meaning of that. But selfless, no self, like you matter so little that there is no self to worry about. That's that's horrible, quite frankly.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, and even, you know, if you get on, okay, so I think we can all get on board with the idea that, yes, it's a good thing to look after the needs of others and to care about the needs of others. Of course, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. But there's a paradox underlying this idea of selfless, because how can you give of yourself to others if you're not supposed to have a self? So it's, you know, that's a tricky thing to get your head around. If you're not building up yourself, if you're not doing things to make the most of yourself and who you are, how can you best serve others? What have you got to give?
Yeah, I guess we were talking about this a little bit before, and I see it as a sort of scale. I'll be honest, I don't really think about selflessness, partly because I can't say it, I think. I'm not going to concern myself with words I can't say. So, but there we go. Well, I'll say being selfless just to make it a bit easier. Yeah. I don't concern myself with it that much, because I guess I see it as a little bit of a scale. If you've got selfish at the other end, and I think we can probably all agree, if you're described as selfish, that's not something that we're going to take particularly well. It's got quite negative connotations, hasn't it? It sort of means me first, don't give a damn about anyone else, and I want, I need, I must have kind of thing. It's got that kind of connotation to it. actually, I think that's probably doing it a bit of a disservice. And I think we'll talk a bit more about that. But if you've got that almost like at the really far end of the spectrum of being selfish and then being entirely selfless, if that's even possible at the other end, I think for me, it's about what's some kind of happy medium compromise where, you do matter because you can't, we like this phrase, don't we? Pouring from an empty cup, because if there's nothing to give, you can't actually do anything. So we have got to look after ourselves. But yes, absolutely caring and giving to others. And I think as mums and as parents, we do get very used to thinking of, well, our children, don't we, ahead of ourselves. But I think it's nice to think that sometimes it's like, well, actually, I need to be a little bit selfish and do something for me in order to be able to look after and do all the things that they want to do as well. So I kind of try and think of a nice middle ground rather than at the extremes.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking now, what is the appropriate term for that middle ground? Because it, as you say,
yeah, we need a new word. We'll have to come up with one. If we think of one, we'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, if anybody else can think of one, we'd love to know. Yeah, but then I think there's also another aspect of this whole selfless thing is that if you are being selfless, putting yourself into the service of others, you're not supposed to benefit from it. It's around the needs of others, not your own. And yet, I would argue that often helping others meets our own needs. And that can be a less healthy thing if that gets linked to sort of people pleasing and validation. But when it's linked to your sense of purpose, when it's around fulfillment of something that matters to you, that's a positive thing, surely. And yet it doesn't feel like that fits the concept of selfless to me. Yes, you are looking out for others. But I mean, in the definition, it says concern more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own. But if you are benefiting from it, if it meets your sense of purpose, you're not prioritizing somebody's needs more than your own, but you're still doing a really good thing. So is it only selfless if you don't like doing it?
Well, I don't know. Does it have to be? You'd like to think that you could do something that's nice for somebody else and shows that you're perhaps putting their needs higher or more, like you said, than your own, but maybe not to your absolute detriment. I don't know. Is that even possible? Do you think?
I think it is, and I think we're doing it all the time. I think my issue is more with the way we use the word and the concept and the kind of associations that maybe subconsciously it can have for people, because maybe I'm wrong here, and I'm willing to be shouted down on it, but if it's something that tends to apply far more to women, women are much more expected to be selfless and to fade into the background than men are. And that bothers me in terms of what it says about how we should be looking after ourselves, how we're allowed to look after ourselves. And I know that many women feel guilty for looking after themselves. They are so busy trying to meet everybody's expectations around being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, the perfect colleague, the perfect manager, the perfect friend. The list goes on and on. And if at some point they draw back and say, no, I need to do something for me, they feel bad about that. They feel bad about not saying yes to everything and maybe, shutting themselves away with a book and a cup of tea when they should be doing something that they were asked to do, or, cooking a healthy dinner instead of looking for a takeaway menu.
Yeah.
Not speaking personally, obviously, shocking behaviour. And I do it all the time. And yet, that sort of behaviour of saying, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm exhausted and I need a break. I'm going to get takeaway because I need some time to myself. That does not meet the definition of selfless. And yet it facilitates all the serving of others.
Mm. Do you know, I wonder if it's something that people are getting a little bit more okay with. Like I remember there was a time when the phrase self-care is not selfish. That was something bandied around quite a lot. And, you know, we hear the phrase, you have to put your own oxygen mask on, all
Yes.
those kind of, you can't pour from the empty cup, which we've said already. I wonder if there's more of a movement now that people are recognizing that you can't be endlessly, oh, here we go, more S's going on here, endlessly selfless, because there's nothing to give from. Just going back to what you said right at the start about it meaning no self. Well, if there is no self, there's nothing to give from at all. So I wonder if, I'm not saying maybe it's become absolutely healthy, but do you think people are getting a bit more okay with acts of what might be deemed as vaguely selfish, by putting themselves actually first for a change or once in a while?
I think things are getting better. I think the message is getting clearer, but I also think it may still be a more superficial thing for a lot of us than a truly embedded. I've lost the word. Yes, something that you truly believe. It's something that sort of on a rational level you understand and you accept, but it's not really embedded as a way that you can behave.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you still are on something there. And I think it's partly because we said what we said very early on about, well, you can look at historical ways in which women have been in very much in the backseat. You know, we didn't vote and all kinds of things that meant we didn't matter for such a long time. Luckily, we've moved past a lot of that right now. But I still think we have issue with this idea of being selfish. It's like something very undesirable to be labeled as selfish. Yeah. So I guess ironically, you've pointed out a lot of flaws with the word selfless. I said that I don't concern myself with it very much, but I do have an issue with the word at perhaps the other end of the scale, selfish, because I think maybe that word is slightly misunderstood, or it at the very far end of what I'd say of the scale is how we perceive it. And I think there is a much more okay part of being selfish that's absolutely necessary. You know, we've spoken recently. I've not felt massively well recently, so I've had to be a little bit selfish and say I'm going to rest for a little bit, because I know if I'll try and do something, there's nothing to come because I've got nothing to give. And yet I've not concerned myself with thinking, well, this is selfish. I've actually just thought it's necessary. And I think, have we reached a point where we recognize what's traditionally selfish versus what's actually necessary? Probably not, I think, is my answer to that.
I agree. I think we are making good progress. Things are better than they were, aren't they? And it's certainly applying far more physically. You know, the need to rest when you're physically unwell and to look after ourselves is perhaps better established than it was. I'm not. Yes, we are making progress on sort of the mental and emotional side as well, but I think mainly in terms of looking after ourselves when things get bad, rather than in terms of sort of taking preventative measures, looking after ourselves in order that things don't get bad. So the working on ourselves, strengthening that sense of self and our knowledge and understanding of ourselves, the whole personal growth piece, I think that is still considered more a luxury than a necessity or a useful thing. And yet when you have that, just as you were saying about, you know, then being able to recognize that need to take a step back and rest when you were ill, and being able to make your peace with that to some extent, at least, that work on yourself is a vital part of it. And maybe that's where selflessness is perhaps quite a dangerous idea, in suggesting that we shouldn't have a self. We shouldn't be working on ourselves. It feeds into that whole idea of self-development as a luxury, a frippery that doesn't merit our time or effort or money.
Yeah. Oh, I think you've hit on something, a really big point there, which is about what's perceived as a very much a nice to have. I think frippery, great word. Not one you get to use very often, is it? But it just that seems kind of so frivolous and lightweight to think about these things. It's not like, oh, I've broken my leg, I have to rest so I can physically walk again. It's a very different concept to, I am mentally exhausted and need to have a rest or work on myself, or what something that might seem like, well, what does that mean even? Is that a weakness actually? Whereas, well, obviously we would say it's not, but have we come quite far enough in those ways of thinking? Yet there's probably still a lot more to do, and I think you really landed on something there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how we are making that progress, but even though these kind of messages are so often put out there and said, I don't think they are really anywhere near really embedded yet. But we'll keep doing our bit.
No, yeah, let's keep going. So
here we are.
Let's help create this healthier take on it then, Kirsty, because I think you've got some really great messages to share here.
Well, I mean, based on all, a lot of this might sound like wordplay that we've been talking about, but I think it does play into that sense of what it is to be selfless and our expectations around what it should be like and how it should feel. But the first thing I think is to celebrate the fact that doing good shit can actually be fulfilling and enjoyable. It doesn't have to be selfless in the sense of, a subjugation of all that we are in order to serve others. It can be fulfilling. It can meet a sense of purpose in us. And that's a good thing. Why not make the most of it? Everyone's happier. That feels like the ultimate win-win to me. And yet, I'm not sure it could be classed as selfless. And, giving of ourselves is not the same as sacrificing ourselves. I think that there is it's not a word we've used yet, is it, sacrifice?
No.
But I think there's a huge part of that in the idea of selflessness. I'm getting the image of sort of, a saint being burned at the stake or whatever, kind of,
more
I will
grimness.
sacrifice everything for the greater good. Leaving aside the fact they thought they were on a fast track to heaven, so they weren't exactly not benefiting from it. But anyway, sometimes we can give without sacrificing, and sometimes prioritizing your needs today is the best way you can help others tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that we do the most good. We can do our best by others when it comes from a really strong sense of self, of knowing who we are, what our capabilities and our limits are, and what really matters to us. And that's very much not selfless. That is about building yourself up, knowing yourself, growing yourself, developing yourself, because that's how we best can serve others.
It's funny how you've pretty much described our line of work there, Kirsty.
Oh.
Who'd have thought, hey?
That was genuinely not deliberate, but yeah. And that's what I love about what we do. Well, one of the many things I love about what we do. So does that make sense? The fact that we can, this whole concept of selfless carries these ideas of sacrifice and sort of subjugation of our own needs and desires with it. And yet what we do that gets termed selfless can actually be really joyful and really fulfilling and meet a sense of purpose and help us grow and develop and be better.
Yeah, I love that take on it. Yeah, and I think that's so much more healthy and pleasant to work towards. I think what we've identified really is there are problems with how we perceive certain words and what they really mean, but actually there's the reality, and the good place to be is somewhere where they start to converge in the middle, and it's not perhaps as complicated or as hideous as we might think it needs to be. So yeah, no, I really like how you've put that, and I think you've got some great quotes to share with everyone on, and I imagine these might have been a bit tricky to find, so do share what you have come up with.
Well, I think you might like this one, Catherine. It comes from somebody called Edward Albert, and it's sometimes you have to be selfish to be selfless.
Yeah, straight to the point, but makes perfect sense to me, especially when we talked about this, there being no self to give from. So yes, maybe it should be selfful. That's a terrible word, isn't it? Would you like it? Sounds a bit like soulful, doesn't it?
Well, what should we be full of if not ourselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, selfful. I like that. And another one that sort of illustrates things well is from Adam Grant. In the eyes of many people, giving doesn't count unless it's completely selfless. In reality, though, giving isn't sustainable when it's completely selfless.
Yeah, I think you have explained that very, very well today. And yeah, it's not sustainable, and perhaps not even really applicable in many cases anyway.
Yeah, it's we're allowed to look after ourselves in order to give, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. So, a question, because we always finish with a question. So, this week, consider an area in your life where you're feeling drained and resentful, or maybe in danger of being so, by what you're giving. What are you telling yourself about why you have to keep doing it, and how true is that?
Oh, this is a great question. And for me, the answer came straight away. It was social media. Good old social media. And I have a real love-hate relationship with it. I probably always have done. And it's interesting. I've read some studies actually that people who've backed away from social media are on the whole a lot happier than those who are still using and are on. And I'm kind of not surprised that that's the truth in it. And the reason I have this sort of hate relationship with it is that I do it to be seen, to be visible, to do all those things, to try and share what I do. But it's also something I'm so not in control of. I don't know if what I post will be seen or will resonate, or any of those things. And so I guess where my resentment comes is, and I think I'm giving my precious time to this, possibly fruitlessly. And yet I worry that there might be some fruit there. So that's why I still potentially do it. So I have this kind of, like I said, sort of love-hate with it. But I'm trying to strike a healthier balance with it. I know that one of the messages I probably am saying is that I feel like I should be there because I'll be missing out if I'm not there. And yet, bizarrely, I was tuning into a podcast this week. I'm allowed to listen to only the odd one or two elsewhere. And someone was literally saying they took their business off social media in 2021, and they're doing really well. Now, to be fair, they had a big audience and sort of corporate links before they did that. But I just thought it was so interesting that I came across that podcast this week when I was feeling particularly, narky about social media. So of course I listened with great interest, but it is then about what are the realistic alternatives. But I like to think I'm quite pragmatic about these things. If I now know I feel a bit resentful about social media, well, what am I going to do about that? What will I do to change my relationship with that so it feels a bit more balanced? I'm all about things being in a greater sense of balance. I've talked about my feelings about selfless and selfish being at sort of opposite ends and happier grounds in the middle. So I'm all about trying to find where is my happier middle. I don't think I'll go cold turkey. I can't imagine quite giving it up entirely, but having a better sense of it, if that all makes sense. But I'll let you know how I get on with that.
It does, and I think when you keep giving to the point that you're feeling that drained and resentful, when it's not fulfilling you, it just changes your whole relationship with the giving of it, of the doing of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want that, because I think it would be sensed, If it feels like, oh, here's something just because, then what's the point, really? I'm definitely wasting my time if that's my relationship with it. So do tell us yours. What's something that's possibly, or maybe is already, making you feel drained, resentful, or both?
Well, this is something that happened to me recently when I realised that in the volunteer role I do, I was starting to feel knackered and really quite cross about things. And I realised I was saying yes to everything. So all the cries for help that went out there, I volunteer with a charity which is, the service is provided entirely by volunteers. We have to do everything. So that there's lots of sort of swapping of stuff around other. We have to do shifts, and life happens, and people have to swap around. We need people to step in to do stuff at the last minute. We need to do all sorts of bits and pieces in addition to what we originally signed up for. So these questions and requests go out, and they're mostly generic. It's, can someone help with this? And I realised that I was jumping onto everything and taking it more as a, can you help, taking it quite personally, and then feeling that I was just doing far too much, and I was telling myself, it's the right thing to do. It's more important than having me time, and I should do it and should want to do it. It's not fair to expect others to do it. If I won't, I'm probably better placed than most to do it. I should be willing to sacrifice the things I want to do. And just all that alone, I'm thinking, it sounds a little bit crazy and unfounded and martyrish, frankly. Is that a word? Probably should be. So, those things can, it's like it's about finding that middle ground. Sometimes I can say yes to things, and sometimes I'm allowed to say no to things, and that's okay. So once I started applying that, and also really sort of tuning in to how I felt about it. If I said yes, if I thought about saying yes, what did I actually feel when I said yes? And if it was that sort of sinking, tight feeling, then I shouldn't be saying yes. Whereas it was, yeah, whatever. Or, yes, let's do it. Then, yeah, I'm going to do it. Once I twigged that and started not leaping into the breach every time, it's not even like I actually had to say no. I just didn't have to say yes.
Pretend you didn't get the email. Even better. Oh, I didn't see that one.
Shh, don't tell people. It's something that simple made me feel so much better. And I went from a point where I was thinking, maybe I need to take quite a significant sabbatical doing this. Maybe I just need to stop altogether. And I've just sort of finessed what I'm doing to that point. I'm now going, can't believe I was thinking about doing that. I'm fine. It feels much
that's
better.
A really good example of bringing us back to that happier middle ground, because I think clearly you do this because it does give you something of value and purpose, but it has to be within reason and not to your detriment. And it sounds like because you were feeling obliged to say yes more often than you really wanted to, it was heading in that direction. Whereas now what you've done is just drawn it back towards the middle, where you're not always going to say yes, it's your choice. So you can have that sense of the meaning and the purpose and the giving, the good stuff, but on your terms and when that's okay. So I think that's a really good example of it striking the middle ground.
Absolutely. And, the work we do, I've heard a lot of people describe the volunteers who do that work as selfless. And yet I know for me, it is absolutely one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And I haven't spoken to any other volunteer who feels differently. We are all benefiting from doing it too. It's not selfless, and we learn about ourselves in the process. On which note, let's wrap up this episode with just a reminder of the question. So, where are you feeling drained and resentful, or in danger of becoming so? What are you telling about why you have to keep doing it, and how true is it? Because that can be a game changer. Until next week, goodbye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.